it's a little hard to know where to start. And the people in this room who know me well, which is pretty much everybody who's here is a doctor, I would know that I'm pretty good at telling circuitous stories. And my career's kind of been like that. But if I had to give you the bottom line about why I'm a family doctor, it's because I get bored easily. And there is nothing that will keep you from getting bored better than family medicine. And the other thing that I'd like to say as sort of a take-home point is, you know, for those of you who are first years and you're getting through all that crud that you have to get through before you get to the really fun stuff later on, family physicians are the pluripotent stem cells of medicine, all right? I'm not kidding you, right? Okay, so let me just tell you really quickly about a chronology we heard. Unlike many of the other physicians in this room, I've wanted to be a doctor since I was 4, okay? Flat out, never wanted anything else. What specialty I wanted changed a lot. There are times I can find essays that I wrote in 6th grade about how I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon because I like to play soccer and I wanted to be a doctor, so I figured combining the two made some sense. Yeah, that didn't happen. But you know, it's fun to have colleagues who choose to take a kind of sports medicine path, and I learned a lot from them. So I went all the way through college, and I was kind of burned out, and I wanted to get out in the real world. And that's one of the things that I like now in medicine is a lot of people have done other things and haven't necessarily gone straight through. So I went back from Chicago, where I went to college, to Massachusetts, where I grew up, and worked for 2 years as a medical assistant in ophthalmology practice. Loved it. And it was a subspecialty, sub-subspecialty. All we did was the anterior segment, right?
On the right eye.
we did do both
that side too. Okay.
It wasn't quite that subspecialty. But it was kind of cool because we were doing kind of complicated patients, glaucoma and cataracts and all sorts of weird stuff. And the guy I worked for was the head of the eye trauma service at Mount Sinai, right? And so we got these relationships with patients, and we got to do medicine and surgery, and I thought that was kind of cool to do both, and I got to observe on some surgeries and, you know, get to know these patients pretty well and their families. And so I came to medical school thinking I was going to be an ophthalmologist because I could do all these cool things, and get to know my patients, and et cetera, et cetera. Well, in those days, it wasn't typical. This was back in the mid-'80s. It wasn't typical for medical students to have clinical experiences until 3rd year. But my medical school, UMass, had an optional longitudinal preceptorship in family medicine. And you got to spend a half day every other week for 2 years with the same family doctor. And I thought, well, I don't want to be a family doctor, but at least I'm going to get some clinical time, and I'm going to go off my rocker board if I have to sit in my classroom for 2 straight weeks, right? So I got really lucky, and I got paired up with this married couple in practice together. And I'm Jewish, and they're Jewish, so we have that in common too. By winter break of my 1st year, I knew I was going to be a family doctor, and I knew that's what I really had wanted when I wanted medicine and surgery and the delivering the babies and the taking care of full families and the continuity relationships. So that was part of his history, and then I ended up out here because in 1989, he's nodding his head over there. He knows what's coming. My medical school sent me off. It was the first year they ever sent students to the Family Medicine Students and Residents Conference, the AFP Students and Residents Conference in Kansas City. Some of you have probably been. If you haven't, I encourage you to go. It's really awesome. And that man over there with the purple shirt on was at that point the chief resident in this program here. Now I knew that I wanted to be a full scope doctor, and I wanted to do C-sections, and I wanted to do everything. You can't do that in Massachusetts. You can't do that really almost anywhere on the East Coast. It may be a little better in some places now, but it's challenging. And in those days, it was really challenging. And I didn't want to have to do a whole fellowship afterwards. And he tells me, no problem, come to Oregon. So I did. Came out here to do sub-I, loved it. He was the residency director then. By that time, he was on faculty. Really loved this place. I came out here in '91 and said, oh, this is where I was supposed to be from. So here's what right? My joke is that I was born in the Northeast with a Northwest soul, right? So here's what I've done since that time. I did residency. I got all my C-section training in residency. I went out into private practice across the river in Clark County, Vancouver area. Was in full scope, womb to tomb, C-sections, whole 9 yards practice for 4 or 5 years out there. I was medical director of a 21 provider group, 2 years out of residency. That was interesting. I did administration both in the practice and in the hospital. I did peer review. I did a whole bunch of stuff out there. had my first child about a year into practice, and like Jonathan, our family made a decision that my husband's home full time. I met him here. He was a nurse in the emergency department. Yes, we did that doctor nurse and gender reversal. So he's been home full time, and I got a package deal when I got married. So I have a stepdaughter too now, who's 33. So I've had a teenager ever since I can remember. Now I have 2 more of them. And so I've been really lucky because he's incredibly supportive and has helped me make my career manageable, which I think I could have done in some ways, but it would have been much tougher if Michael hadn't been willing to be the full-time dad. And so I did that, and then I took better part of a year off because this guy said he'd give me a job if I wanted to come back. He did because he was chair then, and I came back and I got to work with Scott and a whole bunch of other really great people, and I started out doing mostly medical student education. And I helped run PCM, and I learned how to write papers, which he taught me how to do, and I learned how to be involved in a big department from John, and I helped teach several of the people in this room, including Jesse and Ben, and also people, and I learned about sports medicine from John, and got to know from Jim, and got to know John, because we worked together at Richmond, and Lisa Dodson was my family doctor, and now Jessie is, right? So I get care from people in this room, and my family does too, and that's part of my community. And so this is the next thing I would say to you. As you think about a specialty, don't just think about what you like to do, think about who you like to work with, right? Right? I see Michael's head nodding. I haven't actually taken a vacation with many of my colleagues here. I've taken some short trips with some of them. I've gone to conferences with a bunch of them. I would willingly go on a vacation with any of my colleagues for a week. There might be some awkward moments, but we can make it work because they are really, really great people. And they are people who, if they called me up at 3 o'clock in the morning, even if we'd never done anything together outside of work, I would do anything for anybody in my department. Okay? Because they are people I trust completely, I respect deeply, and I really, really like personally. You better like the people you're going to work with, because you're going to spend a boatload of time with them, right? So I did pre-doc for a while, and then I got sick. I have multiple sclerosis, and I got really, really sick in 2001. And I'm very lucky because I work for a really, really great guy over here, and he helped make it possible for me to readjust my life and come back in a different role. I did a bunch of work trying to get some grants, and I came back and I did research for a while, did medical education research, some of the stuff Ryan's helping make work now, and did that for a while, and then decided that I wasn't really that great at research and it wasn't what I really loved doing, and had an opportunity to move into doing something entirely different. I've been doing some human subjects protection. I really like medical ethics. So I spent 4 years as the chair of the Institutional Review Board here. And that was a great job for a family doctor too, because what they needed was somebody who could understand a little bit about pretty much any protocol that came in front of us, right? And there's nothing like being a family doctor to help you do that. So I did that for 4 years. And then that was getting kind of boring, and I had an opportunity to move over and do faculty development, which is really fun, teaching teachers and helping them really enjoy what they're doing and get to be better at what they're doing. And then I had this opportunity to run for legislature. And that came about because I'd spent 10 years doing advocacy through the Oregon Academy of Family Physicians, trying to focus on patients, right? I mean, the Oregon Medical Association is great, but they go down there and they focus on doctors. And the OAFP decided we were going to focus on patients. So we spent a boatload of time down there. I got to know a lot of people. And I finally got to this point where I decided that if what I really cared about was having Oregon be the healthiest state in the nation, I had to care about it being the best educated state in the nation, and the state where it had the best transit infrastructure, and an environment, and a sustainable economy, and the kinds of things that are all the social determinants of health, where we don't have food insecurity, and where everybody's literate, and all those kinds of things that make a real difference. And in the meantime, I was doing urgent care, because that was a little bit easier with my health. It was more unpredictable sometimes. And so urgent care was fun, and I'd done a lot of fill-in teaching for medical students and then precepting residents in clinic. Lynn and I shared a great medical student, Mimi Cho, and she was out doing her clinical stuff with Lynn, and then I was her MPH, I think she was the MD MPH program, and I was on the MPH thesis committee, so that was really fun. And then I had this opportunity to go to Salem. And I got to tell you, there is no better preparation for being a legislator than being an academic family physician. If they think they've got politics in Salem, they ain't seen nothing. but really, I mean, if you think about the systems thinking that we do in family medicine, the fact that we don't just look at right eyes, we look at whole people in the context of whole families and whole communities, as you've heard from a lot of my colleagues here, is really, really cool. And the communication skills that we learn, and the listening skills we learn, and the ability to synthesize lots of different kinds of information into one whole, and the desire to be a lifelong learner, I'm never bored, I can tell you that much right now. So it's really great to be able to take what I've learned over 25 years in medicine, oh now I guess, and take that to a very different place and be able to inform how we think about this state. So I've talked for way too long, which I usually do, and we'll visit one more thing. Monday, March 11th, which isn't that far from now, this coming Monday, is the OAFP Legislative Day in Salem. We bring boatloads of practicing family physicians and residents and medical students. You went at least 1 year, didn't you? Twice, 3 years, twice. And we go down to Salem en masse. We all wear little buttons and everything, and we hear talks from people. I'm actually giving one of the talks this year instead of listening to the talks. And we get people set up to meet with their legislators wherever you happen to live. We'll put you in and see that. It is not too late to sign up. You don't have to have any previous experience talking to legislators to do it. We don't bite. Most of us take showers on a daily basis. And if there's any chance you can extricate yourself from whatever you should theoretically be doing on Monday and come to Salem, all you have to do is write to Carrie Gonzalez, kg@oafp.org, and she'll make it happen. It's super fun. In addition to those meetings that you guys were talking about in April, think about it. If you can't come this year, think about it for 2015. We'll do it in the odd numbers in the long session years. So thank you all very, very much. Even though if you email me at Steiner, it says I'm leaving, I'm not checking the email, I really am. It's just an excuse, so I don't have to answer when I don't want to. Let's do all answers.